This video is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. What's up, guys? We are here for the predictions of the Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady Fight Night card. It's the best Fight Night card of this month and next month. The card has 13 total fights, and it starts about 3 hours before the usual time slot. Prelims start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and the main card starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The main event is great with Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady. The co-main event, Jessica Andrade versus Natalia Silva, is another good fight. You also have Matt Schnell versus Cody Durden. It was supposed to be Matt Schnell versus Joshua Van, which was a way better fight, but those are your ranked fights of the card. But Oven St. Provers Ryan Spann is a good fight. Andrade Lima versus Felipe dos Santos is a pretty good fight as well. Trevor Peak versus Yanal Ashmouz. That fight's most likely ending by a knockout. But I would have to say that the prospect of the card is probably Andrade Lima. He's a very good striker. He's the guy that got bit and won by DQ because of that. So he does have a bit of legacy there. You know, he even got that tattooed, which is crazy. The bite mark. Very good fighter. And even his opponent, Felipe dos Santos, he could be the prospect of the night too. That's such a good fight, man. The stake of the night, the fighter that's closest to getting cut or most desperately needs a win, is Ryan Spann. He's the only fighter on the card that's on a 3-fight loss streak. He lost to Bogdan Gushkov, Anthony Smith, and Nikita Krylov. They're giving him a good fight here with an older Oven St. Preux, but OSP has always been a very unpredictable fighter with a very unique skill set, very unique style, the way he throws punches and everything, so it's going to be an interesting fight for Ryan Spann. He should win the fight, but you never know with OSP. Sometimes he just is able to tough his way into a finish. He's good on the ground, he's good in the stand-up, even though his technique looks not great, not polished, not like fundamentally sound, but he makes it work. But I would say that the fighter of the night is probably Gilbert Burns. He's the biggest star on the card. He's a former title challenger, a bit older. He's going to definitely need a win here because if he loses to Sean Brady, that's probably it for any title aspirations for Gilbert Burns. And it's always a tough matchup when you're going up against a rising contender like that. But the banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, in my opinion, is that Trevor Peak versus Yanal Ashmouz fight. Both guys are knockout artists. They commit with the overhands. They commit with the power punches, the huge hooks. Trevor Peak, though, commits with the hammer fists, back fists. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to hit you with his collarbone. Like, this guy tries to knock you out with any kind of strike he can throw. And the fight of the night, the best fight on the entire card, in my opinion, overall, is probably the main event, Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady. They're the two highest skill level fighters in the entire card, both amazing grapplers. Brady's getting much better with the striking. Burns should have the striking advantage. That's an actual good main event for a fight night, where we didn't have a lot of those in the last several cards. And with that, let's go right to the first fight in the featherweight division between the Lithuanian Zygimantas Ramaska and the English Nathan Fletcher. Ramaska is 27 years old, 5'11" in the featherweight division, 71-inch reach, 9-2 professionally, currently on a 4-fight win streak. One of those in the Ultimate Fighter, the 3 professional fights, all knockouts. And this guy used to be a lightweight at one point in his career, whereas Nathan Fletcher was a bantamweight before. So you see the height difference. They were in different weight classes before. Ramaska is definitely going to be the bigger fighter in there. He's enormous for the weight class, and that guy hits like a Mack truck. But Nathan Fletcher is 5'7". He's 26 years old with a 70-inch reach, 8-1 professionally, 2-1 in his last 3 fights. He lost on the same Ultimate Fighter that Ramaska was on. But he's more of a grappler, so it's going to be a striker versus grappler matchup. I think Ramaska is going to win the fight. He has a size advantage. He's a better striker. He hits way harder. Seems like he has more confidence in the stand-up, whereas even though Nathan Fletcher is getting better with his boxing, he's getting better with his stand-up overall, he's not as confident with his pressure, and I think he should put more pressure on opponents because he is able to switch from wrestling to boxing, right to wrestling again. Like, he's very good at mixing it up. But without the pressure, it's going to be hard to get those same kind of openings on someone like Ramaska, right? Because Ramaska's going to be throwing that right hand heavy. He's going to be throwing a lot of kicks. He has a very good kickboxing base. And the angles that he fights on sometimes can really throw off some of those takedowns, especially if Nathan Fletcher cannot put the pressure on him. He needs to back up Ramaska in order for his wrestling to really work against him, but he could try to time his shots under the big right hands and the big left hooks, or even catch some of the kicks, because the 3 big strikes from Ramaska that he throws in every single fight, he's very confident in, are the right straight, left hook, and the round kicks. Fighters have taken him down from the kicks before, right? They caught his kick, took him right to the ground. He doesn't have great grappling. He just tries to find a way to stand up, and there could be openings for Fletcher to choke him out. He has a good rear naked choke, but getting it to the ground can be the biggest problem for Fletcher if he doesn't time the shot correctly. So I think it's going to be a competitive fight, but I'm going to go with Ramaska here with a 3rd round TKO. Fletcher can win the fight. He has good boxing, solid defense, good fundamentals overall, good right straight left hook follow-up, really good with the right straight counter, but if he doesn't have that pressure to back up Ramaska, man, it's going to be a tough fight for him. So I'm going to go with the underdog, Ramaska. And then we go to the middleweight division between Andrade Petroski and Dillian Budka. Petroski is 33 years old, 6 feet tall with a 73-inch reach, 11-3 coming off 1 win and 2 losses in his last 3 fights. The losses aren't as bad as they look. I mean, losing Michel Pereira in the middleweight division is not crazy. Pereira's probably going to be a top 5 fighter. He did get smoked in like a minute, but it's a really good fighter he lost to. And then the loss to Jacob Malkoun was him running his head into Malkoun's hip and got knocked out from that. So I don't know what that says about his wrestling, but it seemed to be like a freak accident of a collision between them two. But then he got a good win against Josh Fremd. So Petroski's grappling should look pretty good in this fight against Dylan Budka, who's also a grappler, but just not as good as Petroski in my opinion. This guy got destroyed by Cesar Almeida, who's a kickboxer. So I'm gonna have to go with the superior grappler here, who's better in almost every aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and even wrestling, Andrade Petroski. And I think he's gonna win by a decision or a late submission. Then we go to Jaqueline Amorim versus Vanessa Demopolous in the strawweight division. Easy win for Amorim. She's a way better grappler in every aspect. Probably gonna get a quick submission. She's a very high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, whereas Vanessa Demopolous is alright. I think Amorim is gonna be a top 10 fighter in the future, and if she gets her striking a lot better, she might even be top 5. Her guard is absolutely nasty, man. Then in the featherweight division, Gabriel Santos versus Yizia. Santos is from Brazil. He's 27 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach, 10-2 professionally, coming off a 2-loss streak. 1 split decision loss to Laurel Murphy, which is not a bad loss. Laurel Murphy is a very good fighter, and David Onama knocked him out in the second round. Santos has that kind of style where he's going to throw himself into the fire, and David Onama hits so hard, caught him clean with the uppercut. But Yizia is from China. He's 27 years old, 5'7" with a 71-inch reach, 25-4 professionally, coming off a 3-win streak, and he's making his UFC debut against Santos. Now, both fighters are kind of well-rounded. They can strike, they can wrestle, they can grapple. Santos is a lot better with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and his striking compared to his wrestling, whereas Yizia, he's kind of balanced, right? He's decent with the striking, decent with the wrestling, decent on the ground. He's not really polished anywhere. He's a very gritty, tough guy who goes forward and throws big shots, attempts takedowns whenever he sees an opening. You're a generic, well-rounded fighter. And I'm going to go with Gabriel Santos. He's a lot more of a finisher, way more dangerous than the stand-up and on the ground. A lot better submissions, more knockout ability in my opinion, because his striking is a little bit more polished. He's a lot snappier with his shots, whereas with Yizia, he's a bit more laboring with his shots compared to Santos. Now, Yizia might have a better chin, and that can take him pretty far in this fight, but I do think that Gabriel Santos will eventually finish him on the feet or on the ground, maybe dropping him, going for a rear naked choke, finish him off with that. Santos is also the bigger fighter of the two, so that's definitely going to help with his power advantage over Yizia. And even if Yizia takes him to the ground and tries to go for a submission of his own, he does have way more submissions than Santos does because he has so many more fights as well. I do think Santos might be able to get up from the bottom or even reverse Yizia in some moments in the fight. And then we go to the flyweight division in an old school Brazilian standoff, Chute box style. Andrade Lima versus Felipe dos Santos, toe to toe, strike for strike, kickboxing versus another kickboxing style. This is going to be a really fun fight, but I'm going with Andrade Lima. I think he's the better striker of the two. I think he has way better fundamentals. He's way better defensively. Felipe dos Santos commits a lot more with like overhands and big hooks. Felipe goes for the knockout more than Lima does, whereas Lima tries to pick you apart with clean technique and just outclass you in the stand-up. Lima's leg kick is going to cause a lot of damage. His counter punches, he has a really good guard, but with the 4-ounce glove, it's going to be harder for him to rely on a high guard versus the way that Felipe throws his punches, right? Those angles are kind of crazy. A shot can get behind the ear, right in between the gloves. Like, Andrade Lima's gonna have to counter a lot more and use a bit more movement than he usually does because he kind of just stands in front of opponents almost like in a traditional Muay Thai style, and it can work in many moments, but there are those shot placements, especially from the wild angles from Felipe, where those shots can get around the guard. So I'm going with Andrade Lima, and I'm going to go by a decision win. This is going to be a very, very good fight. Then we go to the featherweight division again. Both American fighters, Isaac Dulgarian versus Brendon Marotte. Dulgarian is 28 years old, 5'7" with a 71-inch reach, 6-1 professionally, coming off 1 loss against Christian Rodriguez, who seems to beat all these new guys in the UFC. Never put an undefeated fighter against Christian Rodriguez. That guy beat Raul Rosas Jr., Cameron Simon, and Isaac Dulgarian, taking all of their undefeated records. That's crazy. But I thought that fight was a draw. If not, you could even give that fight to Dulgarian because the first round was a crazy pace that I thought Dulgarian won. Second round, I also give to Dulgarian. Third round, I gave it a 10-8 to Christian Rodriguez. Dulgarian's gas tank really wasn't all there, but then again, how can you blame him for that first round, man? That was such a crazy scramble between them two. The grappling was just chaotic in that fight. But Brendon Marotte is 28 years old as well, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach, 8-2 professionally, also coming off one loss to Terrence McKinney. Marotte is the guy that Terrence McKinney hit him with a right hook and then knee, and then did the Terminator walk at him. Isaac Dulgarian is gonna dominate this fight, man. He's one of the biggest favorites in UFC history. He's a minus 2,500. There's very little Marotte can do to the wrestling of Dulgarian. Dulgarian's also stronger, faster. He's just a better fighter. It's one of the few fights where I can just say he's just the better fighter. He's just better than him. Some fighters are better than others, and this is definitely one of those times where it's very, very clear, right? This is almost like when CM Punk fought Mickey Gall. Like, you just knew who was better. So I'm going with Isaac Dulgarian by a TKO in the second or third rounds. And then we go to the lightweight division. Rong versus Chris Padilla. Rong is from China. He's 24 years old, 5'9" with a 72.5 reach. 25-5 professionally on a 4-fight win streak. I notice a lot of these Chinese fighters, even though they're in their like mid-20s, they have a lot of fights. The mid-20-year-olds in like America, they're like 10-0 or something. But in China, it's like they're seasoned veterans already. And this guy only has 3 decision wins, 14 knockouts, 7 submissions, and 3 decisions, 1 disqualification. Chris Padilla is from the United States, 28 years old, 5'9" with a 74-inch reach, 14-6 professionally, also coming off a 4-fight win streak. All finishes. Gotta go with Rong. I think Rong is gonna win this fight by a knockout. He's the bigger fighter in there. Chris Padilla's got decent defense, but he doesn't have a lot of snap in his punches, and his combinations are a little too loose, and I think Rong would overpower him with a lot of hooks. He's also pretty decent on the ground. He got submitted by Ignacio Bahamondes. Got Bravo choked when he shot a takedown, but he's gotten a lot better ever since. He's been on the road to UFC, looking really good over there, although against lesser competition, but Chris Padilla also is not fighting the best fighters either, so I'm gonna go with Rong by a knockout. He's another lock on the card for me. And then we go to Trevor Peek versus Yanal Ashmouz in the lightweight division. The American Trevor Peek, 29 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach, 9-2-1 professionally, 2-2 in the UFC. Yanal Ashmouz is from Israel. He's 29 years old, 5'9" with a 68-inch reach, 7-1 professionally. He is coming off a loss, his only loss in his career, to Chris Duncan in his last fight. Both guys hit very hard. Both guys are knockout artists. Trevor Peek has his own unusual style to get knockouts. I've literally never seen a fighter fight like this guy. Like, we've seen glimpses of Artem Lobov throwing standing hammer fists, but I've never seen someone fight like they're holding hammers in both their hands. I don't know what kind of fighting style you would call that, but man, is he effective with that style. Trevor Peek is like a created character in some video game, and they're just mashing buttons. Most of the time he wins because he also has a granite chin. This is going to be a legendary scrap. Trevor Peek is very aggressive, puts a lot of pressure on his opponents, throwing all different kinds of strikes. He is toning down the hammer fists a little bit. He's toning down some of the robotic arm punches. He's going to go right after Ashmouz. Ashmouz is a lot more patient. He is willing to just stay on the back foot and look for an opening for him to explode. Trevor Peek does give him a lot of openings, but at the same time, if he explodes with those overhands, he's going to be exchanging with Trevor Peek. And I think Trevor Peek could overpower him. He's a little bit bigger. He hits harder. He's got a chin on him. Ashmouz is the more technical fighter on paper, but not so much to the point where he just outclasses someone like Trevor Peek. I think the physicality of Peek could get him the win here. The fight is even on the odds, but the way that Ashmouz gets knockouts is usually by these winging, wild overhands, and that is playing right into Trevor Peek's game. So I'm going to go with Trevor Peek here by a second round TKO. This is a very hard fight to pick. I can see how both fighters win this fight, but I'm going to go with Trevor Peek, and I cannot wait to see his post-fight interview if he wins. Then we go to Matt Schnell versus Cody Durden. I'm kind of bummed out about this fight because it was supposed to be Schnell versus Joshua Van. But regardless, in the flyweight division, Matt Schnell is 34 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. He's 16-8-1 professionally, 1-3 in his last 4 fights, and all of those opponents are really good. Steve Erceg, Matthias Nicolau, Brandon Royval, like, he's literally lost to the best fighters. Before that, lost to Alexander Pantoja. He lost to Rob Font before. The only guy that was kind of not on that level was Hector Sandoval, but everyone else he lost to in the UFC are high-level fighters. But Cody Durden is 33 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, 16-6-1 professionally, coming off a 2-loss streak. He got submitted by Tagir Ilumpikov and got knocked out by Bruno Silva. Not middleweight Bruno Silva, the flyweight one. Matt Schnell could get absolutely nuked. He has the worst chin in UFC history. Yes, a worse chin than anyone ever that's ever fought in the UFC. He's a flyweight who gets one-shotted added consistently. A flyweight. These guys should not be knocking him out that easily. I understand Luke Rockhold having a questionable chin at middleweight, or Johnny Walker having a questionable chin at light heavyweight. Like, these guys are monsters, right? They're huge. He's getting knocked out by like 5'5" guys who weigh 140 pounds. Matt Schnell. He's a good offensive striker. Like, he has good combinations, decent boxing, all that stuff, but man, he has absolutely no defense. He doesn't move his head. He barely picks up his hands to block punches, and behind that, he has a glass chin. Like, the only guy that might have a worse chin is Cody Garbrandt. Maybe. And I don't even think his chin is as bad as Matt Schnell's. Now, Cody Durden's not that powerful, but if you're fighting Matt Schnell, you do become powerful. So I'm going to go with Cody Durden by a knockout in the second round. I think it's going to be the first knockout in his career since, 2022 when he fought JP Buys. He's got good footwork, good feints. He uses movement a lot more than Matt Schnell does, which is also a big advantage for Cody Durden, right? It extends a lot of Matt Schnell's punches out, creates openings for Cody Durden to counter him and knock him out. And then we go to Kyle Nelson versus Steve Garcia in the featherweight division. Kyle Nelson's from Canada. He's 33 years old, 5'11" with a 71-inch reach, 16-5-1 professionally on a 3-fight win streak. He was supposed to fight Kelvin Kattar on this card, but Kattar pulled out with an injury. But Kyle Nelson's been performing better than he's ever had in his entire career. He's pretty much in his prime. Steve Garcia is 32 years old, 6 feet tall at featherweight, 73-inch reach, 16-5 professionally on a 4-fight win streak. All knockouts within 2 rounds. Crazy. There was a lot of doubt about Steve Garcia after watching his fight with Luis Pena, but then ever since he started his run with his knockout on Chase Hooper, and then extended it to 4 knockouts in a row, just last knocked out Song Woo Choi in the first round, Garcia showed that he's very, very good, and I think this fight between him and Kyle Nelson is a fight that could put the winner into the top 15, or maybe 1 win away from it. When I think of featherweights from number 15 to number 20, I think Kyle Nelson and Steve Garcia are in there. I'm a Steve Garcia fan, man. I think this guy's really good, man. He's got that traditional vintage Mexican style, just goes at his opponents. He's fast, he's powerful, long, huge for the weight class. But compared to Steve Garcia, Kyle Nelson is more composed. He's more methodical with his striking. He kind of reminds me of like a Canadian Guram Kutateladze. He has very good kicks, heavy with his shots, good timing on his counters, very precise with his kicks, great in the clinch, a decent guard on punches and counters with his hooks. There's a lot of similarities between him and Guram, not only with the way that they look, but also with the way that they fight. And he had a great performance against Bill Arguello, landing big counter shots, really good kicks. He did get very wild when Arguello was rocked, and those are the kind of moments that Steve Garcia would probably win by a knockout. The biggest problem for Garcia in this fight are the leg kicks. He's so open to them. He does not check. He doesn't have the kind of footwork to get away from that. His main defense from the leg kicks is to put pressure on his opponents, because if you move a fighter backwards, it's harder for them to throw a kick. But my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Steve Garcia by a knockout in the second round. I think his aggression might get to Kyle Nelson. There are counter opportunities for Nelson, but I think at points of the fight, they're going to start exchanging with each other. I think Garcia is going to get the better of Nelson in that kind of trade in the stand-up. So I got Steve Garcia in a very competitive fight. Could be one of your best fights on the card, and Garcia getting that TKO. And then we go to the co-main event in the flyweight division. The women's veteran of all fighters, Jessica Andrade, versus my favorite fighter out of all the female divisions, Natalia Silva. Jessica Andrade is 32 years old, 5'1" with a 62-inch reach, 26-12 professionally, 2-3 in her last 5 fights, but on a 2-fight win streak. She just defeated Marina Rodriguez and Mackenzie Dern, but before that lost to Tatiana Suarez, Yan Xiaonan, and Erin Blanchfield. She's been fighting in both strawweight and flyweight, fighting the best fighters in the world. I mean, her UFC debut was against Liz Carmouche. She beat Raquel Pennington in her 3rd fight, lost to her later, fought Joanna, fought Claudia, fought Carolina, Rose, Zhang Wei Li, like just everybody. She's essentially like the RDA of the female divisions. But Silva is 27 years old, 5'4" with a 65-inch reach, 17-5-1 professionally on an 11 win streak. Her last loss was back in 2017 to Marina Rodriguez before the UFC. I'm gonna go with Natalia Silva. I think she's a little too slick on the feet, very good footwork, way faster than Andrade, much better of a striker. Andrade's chin is also taking a bit of a hit. There's no female fighter that fights as good as Silva on the back foot. That's the kind of style that you need to fight Jessica Andrade. Joanna showed how good she could be on the back foot against Andrade. So did Rose in their moments in their fights, and Zhang Wei Li as well. The best fighters that competed with Jessica Andrade beat her by being precise and technical moving backwards, and Natalia Silva is one of the best fighters in the female divisions doing that. She has very good footwork, very fast counter shots, good kicks and punches on the back foot, spinning attacks and all that stuff. The main thing from Jessica Andrade is that single leg into a high crotch. That's her main takedown and can get under some of those punches, lift Silva up, slam her, and start to dominate on top. But Andrade has been fighting for such a long time. She's not in her prime anymore. She's not as durable as she used to be, and I think it's Natalia Silva's time to be one of the best flyweights in the world. world. I think she is one of the fighters that could fight Alexa Grasso, Menefira to some of the better flyweights in the future. This weight class is just way, way better than strawweight and bantamweight at this point. So much good talent, man. And Silva is a minus 270 favorite. Minus 270 may be much, but I do agree with her being a moderate favorite at least. And there's a lot of great odds on this card, and you can capitalize on all of them with mybookie.ag. I mean, you got Sean Brady as a favorite, minus 192 against the plus 148 Gilbert Burns, which I will talk about. Natalia Silva, actually a bigger favorite, minus 319 against the plus 236 Jessica Andrade. That's a very big gap. Steve Garcia, the minus 189 favorite against the plus 147 Kyle Nelson. Trevor Peek's actually the favorite. I expect him to be the underdog. Peek is the minus 129 favorite against the plus 101 Yanal Ashmouz. Rong the favorite, minus 238 against the plus 181 Chris Padilla, which I do agree with. Isaac Dulgarian is a minus 3,030 favorite against the plus 1,125 Brendon Marotte. What do you lose betting even $1 on Brendon Marotte? Anytime I see odds like that, I always put something on the huge underdog. I don't think there's a fight where a guy should be that big of a favorite. I don't even think Mike Tyson versus CM Punk should be that big. Anyone can win with a punch, and I think odds like that even surpass a puncher's chance, which is crazy. Andrade Lima's the favorite, minus 187 against the plus 151 Felipe dos Santos, which I do agree with. Gabriel Santos, the minus 270 against the plus 210 Yizia. This is not a fight I would bet on. Jaqueline Amorim, the minus 319 against the plus 244 Vanessa Demopolous. This is the lock of the card. Like, this is the most confident pick besides Dulgarian winning. Andrade Petroski, the minus 319 against the plus 246 Dillian Budka. Another lock on the card. And Nathan Fletcher's the favorite, minus 144 against the plus 117 Ramaska. Not a fight I would bet on. It's a very close fight. So my locks on the card: Rong, Isaac Dulgarian, Andrade Lima, Jacqueline Amorim, and Andrade Petroski. In my underdog of the card, before we get into the main event, so far it's Ramaska, the very first fight. And on my bookie, you don't have to pick straight bets or even parlays. You can even go live betting, watching the fights as they're playing out live, and then bet on them, which is the best way to bet in my opinion. And my book is giving you a first deposit bonus. Well, they'll match whatever you put in all the way up to $1,000. So if you put in $10, they'll give you another $10 for you to play with, or $50 all the way up to $1,000, whatever you want to put in. It will come with a rollover withdrawal requirement, and all you have to do is use the promo code WEASEL, that's WEASLE, to take advantage of my bookie sign-up offer. Make sure to go to mybookie.ag today, where you win big. And with that, let's go right to the main event. Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady. I think the winner of this fight is like 2 wins away from a title shot, so both great grapplers. As you can see, Gilbert Burns is 38 years old, 5'10" with a 71-inch reach, 22-7 professionally, coming off a 2-loss streak, the only loss streak of his entire career. He was winning that fight against Jack Della, but Jack timed a perfectly placed knee, and Bilal Muhammad beat him after Burns was injured in the first round, and before that did beat Jorge Masvidal and Neil Magny. But Sean Brady's 31 years old, 5'10" with a 72.5 reach, 16-1 professionally, coming off 1 win against Kelvin Gastelum. Before that, his only loss in his career to Bilal Muhammad. So both their losses aren't that bad. I mean, they both lost to the champion, to one of the best welterweights in Jack Della as well. Now, stylistically on paper, Gilbert Burns should win this fight. He's the better striker. He hits harder. He's faster, more experience, has good takedown defense, amazing on the ground, one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the entire UFC. But Sean Brady is as well, right? Sean Brady is very good on the ground. He has very good wrestling. I think he has better wrestling than Burns does, but the grappling is going to be quite interesting. 100% Sean Brady shooting a takedown. I think Burns is going to try to keep the fight standing, and Brady's going to try to take the fight to the ground. Burns has the better shot at winning the fight if he keeps it standing versus Sean Brady taking the fight to the ground. It's very, very hard to submit Gilbert Burns on paper. Now, no one's actually attempted to do that besides Damian Maia. Damian Maia did get Gilbert Burns back, and we're talking about one of, if not the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in UFC history, and he was not able to submit Burns. Burns, though, is a lot older now. He's probably not in his prime anymore. But at the same time, Burns did knock out Damian Maia, and Brady's not that great of a striker either. Brady's a better striker than Maia, but he's not that great of a striker where he's going to beat Burns in the feet, I think, right? Unless Burns is completely washed at this point, I don't see how Sean Brady outstrikes Gilbert Burns. He lacks a lot of the snap. He's very basic with everything in the stand-up. The grappling is where he shines. I mean, he is very high level on the ground. But my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns, and I'm going to go by a 3rd round TKO. I think the striking is going to be a bit one-sided for Burns, and he has a lot more experience going 5 rounds as well. I mean, he went 5 rounds with 1 arm against Bilal Muhammad, which is very impressive for him. He went 5 rounds with Woodley back in 2020, and even though Gilbert Burns' striking has probably gotten a little bit worse, there is nothing Sean Brady's ever compared to outstriking someone like Alexei Kunchenko and striking with Jorge Masvidal. Like, Sean Brady's never come close to anything like that in the stand-up alone. He's mostly a grappler who can strike, and I just don't know if his grappling's enough to defeat someone like Gilbert Burns. So I'm going to go with Burns by a TKO. Definitely not a fight to bet on. I am not confident one way or the other in this main event. And that's the end of the predictions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.